Welcome to the 2-Month Review, a weekly podcast brought to you by Open Letter and 3%, in which we take a giant book, break it down bit by bit, section by section, laugh about it, talk about it, and provide homeopathic remedies for your asthma. I am Chad Post from Open Letter Books, joined as always by Brian Wood, author of Joytime Killbox. How you doing, Brian?
I've actually heard asthma is just a mental instability. It's actually not real. Like most things aren't real. Have you tried doing morning sunning? And I have a morning protocol that involves ice baths and salt that can fix most things, including asthma, diabetes, and low IQ.
Yeah. I'm only wearing a shirt so you don't see all my cupping marks. Otherwise, I'd be thumbs up, guns out, you know. just don't want to offend everyone with all my cupping.
And you'll notice, like, though, before we get to the Kaya, hold on a second. Sorry, say hi to Kaya real fast. I'm
Kaya, welcome. You two have an asthma joke in your tagline, so we're on par there. How are you? How are you today? How are you now, Kaya?
Not so bad. Yourself?
Not so bad. So yeah, Brian, go with it. What were you going to say?
Oh, you look good. You must be eating all that liver stuff I sent you. The cod liver oil. Are you on the liver protocol as well? Your skin looks radiant.
I use cod liver every morning.
Okay, great. Wonderful.
It makes my hair grow.
You're not swallowing it.
It's a big circle in the back. That part doesn't grow. Yeah.
That's your testosterone halo. No, but like you remember, like when we watched those like old Western shows, and there's always that one episode where like the charlatan comes to town and he's selling you some little vial that's going to fix everything, or what? And you look at that, you're like, what a bunch of idiots! And then now, like, every single YouTube thing that's recommended to me is like some charlatan selling me shit, fixing shit, like motivation for the day or something like that. Like, have we not learned anything? Like, when they make TV shows 50 years from now, are they going to just be making fun of us for all the stupid stuff we fell for? Like, it's the same thing over and over again, right?
There's so many hucksters. There's just so many hucksters, and of like all variety, like you say, like the serums, the elixirs, but then there's also like all the idea hucksters out there.
How about this? Like, if you have $1 billion, why are you selling me a book for $3?
Yeah.
Why are you wasting your time teaching me how to be a billionaire when you're already a billionaire? I don't get it.
And the easiest way to become a billionaire is to create a system telling people how to become a billionaire.
Take my course.
Have 1 billion people pay you $3.
Yeah,
exactly.
There you go.
I watched, like, for 2 minutes, I watched this Tesla thing that was live. I don't know why I did, because it made me hate life so much. It's like those Apple things where people go to like the Apple conferences or whatever. Yeah, it was a Tesla version of that. And I caught like Elon Musk. I wasn't sure if it was alive or not because it seemed like a robot reading. So it may have been a fake Elon Musk. I'm not sure. But the only thing I saw was take your phone out and scan this QR code. And as you give me 1 Bitcoin, I'll give you 2 Bitcoins back immediately. Or if you give me 1 Dogecoin, we'll also accept like Ethereum or whatever that fake currency. Like, he was literally just saying, just send me some money and I'll give you double right away. Like, it seemed like a sketch or something. Like, it couldn't be real. And like, that was the one part I caught. Like, who are all these idiots that are doing this stuff? It couldn't be easier. You will double your money right away. Like, what are you selling me?
It's like,
that's a Cybertruck in an Elon Musk costume.
I saw one of those Cybertrucks in the wild, and it's like, you are the biggest asshole. Did you ever see that? What was that show on HBO? Anarchtopia, something like that. It was about like all these cryptocurrency bros that would go to like Aruba. Was it? No, it was. Where was it? It was somewhere in Mexico, and like have like this annual meeting. And became like a cult, and like a very crazy, obviously it's already a cult, but this crazy thing which a guy gets shot, all this stuff goes wrong. It's a really good documentary. And like there's moments where like they have all their money from these fake currencies, and then like the next year no one has anything. So it's like this really
who's the totally like off the rails guy? He took his life, but he was living in Mexico, I think. The virus.
Oh,
McAfee.
yeah. That guy's in this movie. That guy's in this
Okay.
documentary.
Yeah, it sounds like it was probably at his house or something. But
he's definitely part of it. Definitely part of it. But
uh,
anyway, so speaking of like strange locales, this season we're talking about Leonard by Alistair Gray, a giant Scottish book. We are going up to page 189 today. We ended at 129 last week, which is after the first chapter of book 1, which is the second book in the book, following book 3 and the prologue. And I probably won't have to explain that again, hopefully. And this is basically this section, to give like a just general overview, and then we can get into specifics. This is Duncan Thaw's childhood during World War II, living outside of Glasgow, going through school, having a crush, getting beaten up, finding friends, and sort of making his way into adolescence. So it's following his life fairly straightforwardly. Like there's not a lot of like strange things that happen in this, compared especially to book 3, the first book of the book, in which we're in Unthink and things are Kafka-esque and metaphorical and bizarre. And the focus in the first book is so much on describing that external reality, whereas in this book we're just with Duncan Thaw, learning who Duncan Thaw is, and most of it is pretty straightforward. And then every so often there's some dark shit. So that's kind of a general overview that we can get into. Brian, you missed last week. How are you with the book right now? Where are you at? How are you feeling?
Just buckle up, enjoy the ride, have fun. I don't always get it, but I don't care. Just kind of swimming in it. It's fine.
Yeah.
Did you make it through 189?
Just about, yeah.
Kaya, you said something similar last week where you're like, I don't know how to hold what I'm holding on to in this book exactly, or what the point of it is. I don't know that this section necessarily clarifies that, but just as a question, where are you at now with that?
Right now feel like I'm kind of like reliving my Angela's Ashes phase of literature, and just like reading, like not coming of age, but fictionally autobiographical, growing up during World War II in Scotland. Like, it feels very comfortable right now, and it feels very, like we were talking about, like a more classical or straightforward literature. So yeah, I feel very comfortable right now.
I think
I'm not. Now it feels like it's going in a direction. I don't know what's at the end of it, but I'm very cozy.
Spoiler alert! What's at the end of it is book 3, which you already read. So there you go. You already know what's at the end of it, to be honest.
Fair.
Also, you have a Ashes session.
In those blanks is interesting.
Yeah. That is like one of the, like, there are some specific things. I thought this section was the funniest. I thought this was like just enjoyable to read. I see you shaking your head, guys, like the funny. You always are like, it's not really funny. I'm like, this book is hilarious. I think this is great.
I mean, there's not like, there are things that are funny, and I have a lot of LOLs written into the margins, but it's not like, I don't know. When I think of funny, I think of when I was hearing you read Sorrentino.
Oh.
And that is like, you're like laughing through that book.
See, I think things like this are funny. And what place has Moses in your view of history? He's the first lawyer. The minister laughed and said, in a sense, yes. But then again, in a sense, no. Like, which is the minister's continual line, but is the first lawyer. That's great. There's just these like a side note, one-off sort of like banter that I think is really, it's very like funny within here. It's maybe not like trying to like kill you with humor, but it is like enjoyably like humorous and like
it's very entertaining.
Voice. Yeah. Brian, you can settle the funny debate.
I think funny can be very subjective. Because there's some things I find absolutely hilarious, and people will look at me and say, "What is wrong with you? Like, that's sick." Or there's things that people find funny, and I'm like, "What is wrong with you? You are an idiot," right? Like, no one's right, no one's wrong. I probably am sick, and they probably are an idiot. So maybe we're both right. But no, there's even like, I don't know. There's like different types of humor. Like this book has a lot of, it has quite a buffet of it. Like the whole sandals and hiking thing was like, I could see that being like a bit on TV, right? Who wears sandals? I like sandals. Oh, so you know how to hike now, huh? You're better than the 100 years of people who have hiked before you. I like my ankles to move. They're not supposed to move. Like it's kind of like back and forth. Oh, what did I do to deserve this sun? And then he like goes into like kind of like more of like the Jewish humor, and then like like
vaudeville.
It was,
and all of us being parents, I think that's another thing where it's like,
wear your jacket. I don't want to wear a jacket. Oh, so you're gonna just freeze.
So every idiot, the idiot who invented jackets over here, yeah.
I actually want to say something about that. It's right there in a way is that I find the dads in this book to be remarkably kind, which is like not what I was expecting. Like generally, it's like poor Scottish or Irish, people. The dads are like blatant alcoholics beating their kids and their wives.
It's just my left foot. Everything is my left foot. The dad. Put him in a wheelbarrow. Get him out of here.
There's just endless tirades of verbal abuse. But like the dad in this, even like with that we were talking about. So as context, there's his dad wants to make Duncan like do more things and he actually like I believe it says that Duncan's dad wanted to become close to his son and
he's investing in his child.
Yeah.
Let's just start there. All right. You didn't abandon him. Great.
That's true. The aware that he exists, wants to have some emotional attachment, buys him boots to go hiking in this mountain, which I think is Ben Rua. Is that what they
first off, it's not a mountain. It says it's like 1,600 feet.
Okay.
So that's a hill. Come on.
It's I don't know what the Scottish word for hill is, but it's probably mountain. But
I think it's Ben, isn't it?
What?
Is it Ben?
I don't know. I think so. Yeah, it has to be. But anyways, he wants to go climb this mountain or climb this giant hill with his son. So he buys him boots. He doesn't want to wear them. But even after that, he's like puts the boots in the closet for like till the younger sister goes into them, and is like, well, that's okay, no big deal. And then when his son does get in trouble for like climbing the mountain, coming home late and whatnot, and wearing sandals, he's like, we're not going to punish you. Like he's like a weird kindness to it. And then the dad of his friend Coulter is like, hey, do you know about this artist or this artist? And is telling him about like various like painters and how he used to run like a Bolshevik painting club or whatever it was called. And like, it's like all like very weirdly gentle compared to like, I think my expectations at least. And maybe I'm, basically pointing out my own stereotypes, but I've read enough like Irish and Scottish stuff where, those kind of characters tend to be pretty violent and pretty unsavory. And that's one of the things I thought was really kind of cool about this section is that's not the case. They're not the ones that are destroying Duncan Thaw.
No, and the dad is constantly like trying to get better jobs. Like he's working and then constantly trying to. I mean, that's maybe a commentary on the other literature that we are accustomed to reading, where it's like there can also just be like upstanding father figures in that part of the world.
I was trying to, that's funny because the next, we have 2 Andres Newman books coming out in September, but the one for next year that we're kind of announcing now, A Father is Born, is about his relationship to his son being born. And then the second half of it is his son learning to speak. And trying to write a description of that is weird because it's like, this is a book about a good father, like a father that like is invested in fathering. And you're like, that sounds boring. Like
there's this cartoon called Metalocalypse. It makes fun of Metalocalypse, and it makes fun of like heavy metal culture. It's one of those Adult Swim shows, and there's this one episode where someone's father dies and they have to go back to Sweden to see their father, and like he hates his father because it's like strict religious and I want to be a heavy metal guitarist. And so they're all talking about how much they hate their dads in different ways, and they're showing. And then it gets to like the brutal lead singer and he goes, I fucking love my dad. Like everything's like them fishing together, hiking together, like my dad's awesome.
That's great.
There's your description of I fucking love my dad.
I fucking love my dad. That's the first words that Andres' son says. I fucking love my dad. That would be great. But yeah, there's that. I thought that was kind of interesting in here. I don't know how we want to walk through this because there's the events are fairly mundane in a way, and it's really like the way in which they're depicted that is interesting. But there are a few things that are like stand out about his interiority. But I don't know. Where do you guys want to start? Is there a particular scene or thing that you had in mind?
Can we start with I know it's a little bit before, but this passage on 117, I know it's in the prologue, which is a little bit before we're going. Which, by the way, do you ever notice like the top on the prologue is like a different chapter title? That's kind of cool.
That's why the title of last week's episode was "Can He Help Lanark Out of Hell?"
Yeah. So in that section, actually, can he help Lanark out of hell? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I think my body is in the world where I abandon it, lying in a bed in some hospital, kept going by infusions into my veins. If so, I have hope of coming alive one day or dying utterly. And now I'll tell you about Duncan Thaw.
Yes. So the weird oracle that's like disembodied but sort of embodied that can know things. That part we sort of talked about a bit as like potentially like kind of a metaphor for the author themselves, like where it's like kind of there and not there. And ghosting and like creating the information while not. But I like the idea that like it would come back and there would be a hospital bed. There's just like a person lying there.
You're gonna get a full Jacob.
Was born.
Another Jacob's ladder. Great.
Mm-hmm.
But no, it's the idea of purgatory, and like we're hearing about this, like this place that we're hearing about doesn't actually like it doesn't exist. It's empty, and we're returning to it. If you know. Yeah. Like hooked up to a hospital bed, not dead, not alive. And it's kind of ethereal and dreamy and nightmarish all at the same time. And we're getting more of like a dreamy section here and not quite as nightmarish as before.
Yeah. Or like there's also the possibility that this section 1 and 2, books 1 and 2 are the real world, and 3 and 4 are like the like either an invented or dreamed world or like institutionalized world, like even within like a body stuck in a bed. Inventing these things. And like I wondered last week or speculated that like some of the characters and things that we'll meet in books 1 and 2 that are more straightforward will be like transformations from characters from book 3 and 4, like that, like if Sludden if Sludden like represented someone, if like Rima was actually this Kate character, if there are like sort of like parallels to them, as in Lanark is Duncan Thaw, like if there was some like through the looking glass version of it. I don't know that in this first whatever it is 60 or so pages that we've read of book 1 they have any like direct parallels like that, but I do know that like when Rima as dragon was talking, she references Coulter, and Coulter is obviously in this section like, heavily, and is like basically his only friend after they have their pissing match. What does that boys do?
In book 1, was it, or not book 1, book 3, Coulter, does she refer to him saying that he's been known as Coulter, or does she just say
I think
like,
so.
Okay. So
I think she says Duncan or Coulter, or I don't know how to find it, but I remember that was there. And the second it popped up with Coulter and here, I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Here it is. It's on page 103. She pondered and finally said, yes, I dreamed a lot of strange things in that armor. You were called Thaw or Coulter, and we stood on a bridge at night with the moon above us and an old man watching from among the trees. You wanted to kill me. I don't remember the rest.
So interesting. So that'll be interesting to see who does what, I guess. Well, I mean, the blonde girl in their class is the blonde woman at the party is the parallel there, and then the priest or the minister of this little town is also parallel with Monsignor whatever. The guy at the institute. Those are two easy parallels. I was not expecting them to be so soon, I guess, or so. I mean, I would think obvious, but maybe I'm just jumping the gun on that.
What do they mean though? I mean, even if they do math, what do they actually mean or represent? There's one other one like related to that, and this is like my being dirty about it, but on page 131 there's the bit at the bottom where he is talking about like they're moving to this hostel and all that stuff. He slept in strange beds where breathing became difficult, and he woke up screaming that he was dead. Sores appeared on his scrotum, which seems like also like that dragon skin, like these sort of sores that appear on people's bodies pop up there. I mean, on his scrotum, which will be a different topic. But yeah, maybe they are obvious, but I don't know what I don't know that I feel like I know what that means or what that like leads to necessarily right now. But it does feel like there is some sort of like, parallels, transformation, back and forth sort of vibe there.
Kind of reminds me of like plagues, like people being inflicted with sores and scales and ailments to the body, and
good old fashioned plague. We can
good
use
old fashioned
right
plague.
now. You
thought the war was bad. Here's some scabs on your nutsack.
There's also in this section like this repetition of spies. And so when you're talking about having, his name was Lanark, or is it Thaw, or is it like changing and shifting and changing identities or shifting names? And they joke around about spies, but then it also is at the end of the book, end of the section as well, like returns to it.
Yeah, that's right. I mean so that section, like specifically, like when he first meets, Coulter, they're first sort of hanging out, and he's like, "Well, how do you know I'm a German spy?" And he's like, "Well, how would you, prove it?"
I'm a British spy, or yeah,
like, I'm a British spy. Like, okay, they're all like, okay, how would you ever tell? It's like sort of like
love adolescent logic.
That's I was talking about this just the other day. Two things come to mind. One, so Harry Matthews, one of his last book that he wrote, one of his last novels was My Life in CIA. That was about how everyone believed he was part of the CIA during like his time in France and as a writer, and that he was spying on people. And the Paris Review famously was like funded by the CIA for like quite some time. So like this wasn't unusual, but he wrote a book about it that basically like is clearly fictional, but also like involves the fact that like people are like, "You're CIA," and he's like, "I'm definitely not CIA," and they're like, "Yeah, that's what a CIA agent would do. Like everything you do is like a CIA agent would do. Like there's no difference." The other thing was when you were talking about Purgatory, we just finished getting ready to restock The Living End by Stanley Elkin, which is not my favorite Stanley Elkin book, but it's like a novella about a guy that gets shot and goes to heaven and hell. And there's a long part about like a sort of purgatory where one character is like, God made a mistake, and God's like, that's it, and like punishes him by putting him into like not hell anymore, but just pure limbo. And he's like, this sucks. Like no one's here. I hear nothing. Like there's no one. There's just nothing here. And it turns out that he can, as he's speaking, someone does overhear him, and it's a groundskeeper at a high school, and that he's been buried under the whole cemetery has been replaced by a high school stadium, and so he's under like the bleachers in like a high school stadium. And his purgatory is listening to this groundskeeper taunt him continuously with stories of, like the war between St. Paul and Minneapolis and like all sorts of fun. It's super fun. But the Elkin Gray thing is funny because the issue of the Review of Contemporary Fiction is about both of them and has those two kind of paired together. And there is like some weird sort of like kind of similarities between the two, not like in writing style, but in sort of like overall intent. But yeah, so they move, I guess, up north. I don't know where they moved, to a hostel for the duration of World War II, which is another thing that I found interesting in this section, is that the war sort of happens off screen, which I not used to either, where it's just like, like he just goes about his life.
Well, those are the two big subversions, right? You expect like really hard times, deadbeat, terrible dad, right? With lots of alcoholism and beatings, and like how hard the war is, and how there's like this oppressive war that's, our childhood was great, even though we had nothing. Like you expect those things, and you don't get any of that.
No, it's just like, goes to school and decides he has to take Latin because all of his friends are taking Latin.
So really the question here is, where's the trauma?
Yeah, where's the trauma? Like, and that actually is an interesting question, because there are these parts where like Duncan seems like hauntedly dark. Like there's a few times where like he describes his like walking. I'm trying to find one of them now. It's not going to pop up right away, is it? Like what's that?
You're just an emo wannabe.
Yeah.
Well, as you're looking for it, I have a dumb question. I may have missed it because I read it fast. Why are we reading about Duncan Thaw in the first place?
So Duncan Thaw is Lanark.
Yeah. Okay. So I figured,
right?
But okay.
And like this is his theoretically, according to Gray in the interview in this issue of the Review of Contemporary Fiction, this is a life in 4 books is the subtitle, and that it is, straightforward in that book 1 is like up to age blank, book 2 is up to age blank, 3, 4, so on and so forth, and that the 2 settings, the sci-fi sort of like Dahlgren setting and then the more realistic Glasgow setting, are just parts of the same character's life. Same.
So like this is like the cliche pastoral, like.
Yes. Yeah. Like
the
this
green,
is how you grow up.
The verdant green rolling hills growing up. Yeah.
Sorry, but in wartime with
sure. But it makes sense why it has like that kind of like dreamy rose-colored tint. Like it makes sense.
Yeah. Yes.
And I think the author's having a lot of fun kind of making fun of these, when you tell these wonderful stories of the past, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And also wanting to become a writer.
Yeah.
And
I think he's
like a child's aspirations. I love when he gets called in to see like the head English teacher story. Like he writes this story and
4 days late, by the way.
Yeah, 4 days late. Super sorry. But then
deadlines.
But one of them, I think it happens more than once where people in this section are like, they're like, kid. They're like, you read books? He's like, yeah, a lot of them. Oh yeah, and they're like, figures, like.
That's true.
Fucking readers, man.
One thing.
How does he slam him? Like, I don't even think an adult could enjoy this book. I think it's
like even for an adult
couldn't enjoy this story. Yeah.
Like even if you're an adult writer, it'd be difficult to pull this off. And he's like, whatever, man.
But what was the mistake that he made? Mixing realism with fantasy.
Yep. And I do know this is not too much of a spoiler, but Duncan's going to go into art school at some point, which is also Alistair Gray's mixture of like artistic and writing things. That
the section starts with drawing it wrong. Like your art is wrong. Well, I want to wear sandals. You can't wear sandals. Sandals are wrong. I want to write this story this way. You can't write a story this way. Your story is wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What was I gonna say with that? One thing, here it is. I found it. Yeah, though not satisfied with the story, he knew that it was the best he had written. The words "even an adult" hurt his pride by suggesting his work was only interesting because he was a child. I love that he's writing. Also, props to Duncan for like doing basically everything to impress Kate. Like that's all he thinks about. He's like, I'm gonna write this story and she's gonna notice me. I'm gonna do these things and she's gonna notice me. She's gonna think I'm pretty cool if I can do these things. And his friend's like, you don't stand a chance. Why don't you go out with like Big Jane? Big Jane will let you kiss her. Like you're too ugly and weird for Kate Caldwell or whatever her name is.
Honestly, these were my tactics in middle school and high school to be like try to be like the mysterious note taker. Did not work well for me.
Bro, I joined the impromptu, the forensics impromptu team for a girl. That's pretty low. That's pretty low rent humiliating. I also then became like state champion of impromptu speaking. Still never got a kiss. Not even a kiss. No acknowledgement. Did nothing. Unnoticed. Doesn't work, Duncan.
Does not work. Can confirm. Does not work.
You better have a big horn than a big pen, if you know what I'm saying. The one thing I have a question for you guys about that's serious is on the Ben Rua section, the first, 137, this part that's written backwards, does that not say cowardice in purple winkles?
Yeah.
What is that?
Winkles are the little things in the sea pools that he was finding.
Oh, okay.
And okay. I don't know why cowardice, but I think he's equating the position where some of them, one of the colors always stays around the edge, and then the other ones are in the middle of the pool. So I think he's like, oh, the ones on the edge are the cowards.
Okay. I guess the main point of that little bit is that he's like, I'm hiding my discoveries in a code. The code is just writing it backwards.
Yeah, a little Harriet the Spy over here.
little Pig Latin for you, like right there. Yeah. Yep. Super fun. So
I really liked this section. I really liked it, and I I mentioned Angela's Ashes, but like I was really into Frank McCourt for a while and that type of narrative in that part of the world. So I'm enjoying it.
I am too. I really, really, really like this section. I also like that his like sort of disdain or like disinterest in the minister is runs throughout, and I like that quite a bit. Where he's just like, oh, this guy with his God stuff, like get out of here.
This minister is the total opposite of the one in the Institute. The one in the Institute is like super depressed, and this one's like, you win some, you lose some, and like a little salty. There's the line, oh shoot, I lost it. Oh, at the bottom of 143, where Thaw's like, I don't know, but I don't believe in hell. And the minister laughs and says, when you have more knowledge of life, you'll maybe find hell more believable. It's like, that's funny. And it's dark. Like, adulting sucks.
I think that part's great, because I had the next part underlined too, where the minister goes on to say, you're from Glasgow? He's like, yes. He's like, I was 6 years a student of divinity in that city. It made hell very real to me.
Yeah. This minister has jokes.
So the one of the things that happens in this section too is like the repetition of the phrases. Like, you're not wrong, but you're not entirely right is like the minister's sort of vibe. And like that comes up a couple times. And then not to jump into the bit, but the 10 minutes later section where he's constantly, Duncan's like, well, he decided he wouldn't do this. 10 minutes later, he's like, I'm not going to masturbate anymore. And then 10 minutes later, he masturbates 3 times. And it's like, and it keeps going through this, like, yeah, I'm going to try and, be a good 10 minutes later. He's like pulling on his knob. Like it's like such a funny repetition. It's like so much funnier than the repetition in Praiseworthy, not to throw bullets at anything, but it is, it works so much more.
We did have a donkey. And
yeah, we have a donkey.
There was the reference of a donkey. We didn't get away from that.
Never escape. Never ever escapes. So then they return home to Glasgow. The war ends in one chapter, essentially. We have the war begins, then we have a hostile, the mountain section, and then it's normal. The Thaw family came home to Glasgow the year the war ended. So the war is over like that, which is also like what we're saying, like it's all off screen and all not there, which is very interesting. And I like that part where Duncan's like, how long is it going to take us for everything to be normal? And his mom's like, a couple days. And his dad's like, months if we're lucky. Like it's never going to be normal again. So there's that section. Then that's where he decides to take Latin, even though he was going to take French. And his reasoning for taking French is that there's better books to read.
Not wrong.
Not wrong. Nobody's hoovering up any new Latin books for you. But yes, that's pretty fun. And he decides to take Latin because everyone else is taking Latin. And also that's the only way that you can get into like a professional college school instead of a trade school. And all the French speakers get to go to trade school. Latin speakers get to go study at the academy. And this goes into like this sort of his young kid falling in love bit with Kate Caldwell. And I thought was very charming and very, very like true to life, where he's like, the girls who had chosen Latin were already there giggling and whispering. It took Thaw a second to notice and fall in love with the loveliest of them. And then it's like his constant like young boy, adolescent, fetish for women and for girls is like so spot on. All the time he felt the pale blaze of the blonde girl somewhere behind him on the left. Twice he dropped a book as an excuse for looking at her while he picked it up. Like, yeah, been there, done that. He kind of likes Kate because she's like moving all the time, which is also funny, like jittery, making noise, doing things, just bouncing around.
Shapes.
And also this section, normal, 152 is my favorite reference of the week, Bob Hope. Who had Bob Hope on their bingo card to show up here?
That was unexpected.
Totally unexpected. So there's all that part. That's where he writes. Then I guess we should talk about his. Well, we can talk about his. So he goes through.
Just ask the question. You want to ask about asthma and masturbating.
Yeah, okay, fuck it. Let's just get to the asthma. So he has asthma. That asthma section is harrowing. So I don't have asthma at all. But like anytime like it's hard to breathe for one reason or another, it's like so panic inducing. And this book made me feel that panic. Like the descriptions of like not being able to get a breath, not being able to do anything. He like is going on a trip to for their summer vacation essentially, and like on the train and whatnot, can suddenly not breathe, can't do anything, has to like lie in bed. They have to get pills. They gets a shot. He constantly cannot get air. And the question, so Kaya, as an asthma expert, or someone with asthma, the real question is that his only solution is that the more that he gets, the more he masturbates, the less asthma he has. So he constantly is masturbating away his asthma. So I want to know, does it work?
Until it starts to backfire on him.
Yeah, it starts to backfire a little bit.
Which I sort of lost the place where it started to backfire. Well, I have never masturbated to alleviate an asthma attack, so I cannot speak to that.
I think you're just gonna have to give it a go and let us know.
Just gonna have to give it a go. But it is true that it does help. If it does help to take your mind off of it. So, not masturbating, but like it does help to do things to take your mind off the asthma, or to like, so I mean that part where he's like when I'm going through a particularly bad season or something, I don't sleep either, because there is that fear of suffocating. Like you know, it seems unreasonable, but it's just like, what if? So I don't sleep. That was all, like you said, harrowing and really fucking real and very uncomfortable. But there definitely is a connection with the psychosomatic aspect of it. And like the more you think about it and the more you get panicked, the worse it feels. And if you are able to kind of deflect, I don't think it makes it go away, but it definitely helps lessen the anxiety, which contributes to it for sure.
I thought maybe like the blood flow, increasing your blood flow would be a positive.
Yeah, I mean that part makes sense. So I mean,
using my Joe Rogan medical knowledge.
Yeah, no, it makes sense that something like that could work or could make a difference. Like what I was thinking about also is that when I was pregnant was the only time in my life where I went 9 straight months without touching my inhaler. It was like the first time since I was in kindergarten that I would see someone use an inhaler in a movie or something and stop and think and not know. I would not be able to remember the exact place where my inhaler was. And there's some studies that like whatever chemicals or hormones or combination of things that your body creates when you're a woman who's pregnant, it kind of like either overrides the asthma, or it just makes it like, it just eliminates it as an issue, a bodily issue. And there are some studies that are being done to see if they can like mimic that hormone or that chemical, whatever, that female pregnant people's bodies create, to give that as an asthma. So I don't know. I mean,
just being pregnant, problem solved.
Being pregnant, as all men know, is just like 9 months of masturbating, right? It's super nice. It's super pleasurable. Can't get enough of it. More pregnancy, please.
I'm pretty sure Thaw was just trying to do like a David Carradine thing.
Yeah. He's like, I'm suffocating enough and get off. It's like,
I should probably get off now.
He ate, then lay and masturbated. 10 minutes later, he masturbated again. After that, he had no weapons to use against the asthma at all.
Oh no!
So
the armory is empty, man. So I think there probably is a psychosomatic connection, and that's interesting. So next time I have an asthma attack, I'll let you guys know afterward how it goes.
So
how about this joke that he puts in here? It's on page 163. He introduces Coulter introduces him to science fiction.
Yeah.
With the magazine, there's a story that he really likes. That's what I like about it. I was reading a great story the other day called Colonel Johnson Does His Duty.
Which is like a very dark Ray Bradbury / Philip K. Dick story. Like the last man on earth, and he seeks out if anyone else survived this nuclear war, finds a guy and just shoots him. It's like, because he's a Russian.
Which, so not wrong. But what I liked about that, Brian, is not just the title, but like Coulter gets a full page to just describe the story that he read. Like these boys are like what, 12, 13, and he's just like freely riffing on this story, and there are no interruptions.
Yeah, again, like sort of weirdly unrealistic, but again, another one where there's like someone telling a story. We kind of talked about that last week. There's lots of like telling a story inside of the novel bits, and like the Oracle tells his story before telling Duncan's story, like there, and then here Coulter tells that story. I had the part before that underlined where they're having their conversation, and Coulter's like, "What are you reading?" And Thaw showed him a book of critical essays on art and literature. Coulter said accusingly, "You don't read that for fun." Yes, I read it for fun. People our age don't read that sort of book for fun. They read it to show they're superior. But I read this sort of book even when there's nobody to see me. That shows you aren't trying to make us think you're superior. You're trying to make yourself think you're superior. I scratched his head and said, "That's clever, but not very true." What are you reading? I was like, that's our podcast. Welcome to the 2-month review, where you can read these books to make yourself feel superior. Our new tagline. So I have like 3 big notes here too that I want to ask you guys about. One is, I mean, the main one first in terms of like the order of them is the key. So he spends a bunch of time talking about if he can find the right words, if he sees the right thing, if the right random thing comes to him, it'll be some sort of like intellectual key that will unlock the world for him. And the closest then he describes this to Coulter, like essentially being like, yeah, you know, this, I'm a dork. And Coulter's like, why is it words? Like this happened to me when I was out in the country and I saw these stars and I had this sense of like great inner peace. And like, I forget how he describes it exactly. But basically like the sense of inner peace, this sort of Zen thing. And yeah, the exact word is, I suppose it was gentle and permanent and more like a friend than anything else. And so Thaw then is like, well, I want to have that experience. You know, I want to feel like that sort of like bliss. And he doesn't throughout here. So the key seems like an interesting like section to put in here into foreground. And I was curious if you guys had any reactions or thoughts to that as to like what that, if that's going to come up later, if that's going to entail something, or if it's just like a general, like we ache for that sort of permanent, definite knowledge throughout our lives, and especially at that age, or similar to what we were talking about last week, Kaya, with like the Institute cures people by essentially giving them like this sort of Zen humanity, like this return to humanity, like get rid of the dragon skin and be like a human, listen to things, telling stories. He tells stories to his sister throughout here, which is similar to telling stories to Rima in her dragon form in the earlier place. But the key, like what could the key, I mean, I don't know that there's any real answer. I just thought it was interesting, and I thought I'd ask you guys what you made out of it.
It reminded me of that one famous Philip Sidney sonnet where he's talking about, he's walking up and down the beach and thinking about how pointless life is, because like this ocean comes, like the tides come and go, the waves come and go. Like I write my lover's name in the sand and the water like shows up and takes it away. And like, what's the point of anything? Where's the permanence? Like I feel so small, like my existence. But if I write it down, and if I write this poem, it's going to live longer than me. It'll live longer than you. It might live a lot, you know, depending, if I'm lucky, it could live forever. And like, I got this feeling of like the key being words, like to like have a sense of permanence and this like weird, strange, you know, brief time we have. And, you know, with the idea of like stars being up there forever, or it could be dead light that you're seeing forever.
Yeah.
That doesn't even exist, but you'll see it your entire lifetime. Made me think of that a little bit.
Yeah. Like right next to that page too, this is like sort of off topic, but I've underlined on 170, 4. Examinations, cried Thaw. It's all examinations. Must everything we do satisfy somebody else before it's worthwhile? Is everything we do because we enjoy it selfish and useless? Sort of in line with what you're saying too, Brian. The other thing I want to talk about was that he references, and this is more just a general note, when he writes his story. Neat. Do you have a comment on the key?
Yeah. Brian got to talk about the key. That's very, very beautiful and very profound. I thought it was just, I thought it was more of like, I don't know, they're making like forts out of garbage, and he's drawing castles in the sand, and he's like, there's got to be a key. Like, of course there is, book reader. Like, yeah, like Harriet the Spy. I thought I saw it more of like a childhood fantasy item.
And I thought it was like a personal motivation that leads to masturbating. Masturbating is the key.
That's the key.
It cures asthma.
Cures fucking everything. But when he talks about his story that he doesn't write, that he's working on, it's about a kid who like hears colors, I believe is what the deal was. That starts showing up over and over again, subtly in the book, including on 178. The yellow or purple spots of occasional roadside flowers shrieked like tiny discords in the orchestra, where every instrument played over and over again the same two notes. There's like a few instances of synesthesia in the book after that, which I started picking up on as kind of like the blending of the visual artist and the writing, or like the literary artist. But I thought that was kind of cool that is subtly in there, and it's not like made a big deal out of, but he does like plant that seed. And after planting that seed, I like notice over and over again that he sort of references colors as sounds or like other forms of synesthesia.
I thought those parts were great. And I also love how the teacher's like, he's like, oh, I've got this great story about this guy who sees colors. And the teacher's like, pretty good, but don't write about that. Don't
do that one. It's
a great idea, but let's not. No.
I like. He's like, don't do that. This is a school newspaper. Like, don't waste something good on this piece of crap. Like, just give me something else. That's really cool. And then I found one of the dark sections. So 179 has this paragraph that's kind of long, but is very much like ties in all of this stuff, and is maybe like the crux of like like one last part I want to reference. So there's two paragraphs that sort of tie together. This one, 179, 10 minutes later, he knew that the asthma had grown too strong for pills, and he began fighting it with his only other weapon. Withdrawing to the center of his mind, he recalled images from bookshop windows in American comics. A nearly naked blonde smiling as if her body was a joke she wanted to share. A cowering, disheveled girl with eyes and mouth apprehensively open. A big-breasted woman with legs astride and hands on hips, and a sullen, selfish stare which seemed to invite the most selfish kind of assault. His penis stiffened and he breathed easily. He fixed on the last of these women, and her face became the face of Big June Haig. He imagined meeting her in the precipitous waste landscapes through which the bus was rushing. She wore white shorts and shirt, but high-heeled shoes instead of climbing boots, and he raped her at great length with complicated mental and physical humiliations. To stop these thoughts from coming to a climax of masturbation, he sometimes wrenched his mind from them and sat amazed that thought could make such strong bodily changes. As his penis shrank, the asthma grew hard and heavy in his chest and throat. Then his mind gripped the image of the woman once more, and a tingling chemical excitement spread through his blood, widening all its channels and swelling the penis below and the air passages above. And behind it all, suffocation waited like an unfulfilled threat. Now, this like the wedding between like the kind of comic book girls and like the idea of like the female image and rape and like physical and mental humiliations is pretty intense. But there's like, I know there's one other section, I will find it, where there's something else where he's walking a sort of that moody emo thing, and it has this tinge of violence underlying it. Like that the violence is there. And that's kind of where when you kind of joke about like where's the trauma? And you can imagine like I always would envision the male father or the father figure in these kind of books being that sort of like aggressive, dark sort of seed to it. But this seems to be outside of that. Like the father figures don't seem to be imparting that, but it seems to be within him naturally. And then on page 188, there's the final bit where he's like lost his mind essentially. Like the asthma has gotten so bad, he's like almost near hallucinating. He has some sort of like mental breakthrough, maybe towards that key or towards whatever. He sits up. Suddenly, he was sitting up and laughing in the darkness. He'd been thinking about the key, or perhaps dreaming of it, and now he saw the universe and the meaning of things. It was hard to put his vision into words, but he wanted to share it. Everything is hate, he gabbled dreamily. We are all hate, big balloons of hate, tied together by Ruth's hair ribbons, which is the kind of crazier part. And then below, men are pies that bake and eat themselves, and the recipe is hate. I seem to be buried in this rockery. So like you start tapping into this, like the core essence of mankind, I assume, but also men, is hate. And that is within him too, with this like violent raping fantasy in the middle of his asthma attack. So there's something dark to like you're saying, like it's kind of like the child, it's easy, it's comfortable. There's like a gentleness to it. It's sort of like, if not a parody, like sort of playing within those tropes of like the childhood, the idyllic childhood. And yet there's that like underlying thing that we know he's been in the book 3, they reference him murdering or raping women. And now that's come up within his mind, but in a context in which it's facing inwards. And you are super identifying with this sort of like gentle book reading kid who's not like particularly like bad or anything. He's like just a kid.
Right. And that's why some of the, like, that's why maybe I'm leaning into the comfort of it, because there is no fruition yet. And if and when that happens, assuming that does happen, then I'm going to feel real gross.
Yeah, that's very true. That would be there has to be some precipitating incident before book 3, obviously. Yeah. So
just waiting for the other shoe to drop, basically.
Absolutely. And I reading the section, I did keep thinking about how it is looking inwards. Like that first book 3 is so much about depicting the outside world, and that's kind of the sort of baked in problem or like situation with anything that's fantastical, is that you have to give like not necessarily the rules of how it all works, but at least a sense of it. Like, how is this different from our world? What is different from our world? What is being described here? And it's all like exterior looking or externally looking. And then this section is so much more inward. Like it's like the opposite of that. It's not really describing the landscape very often. There's like the mountain, you sort of get a description of the hostel, but there's not like a lot of like exterior sort of interest. It's a lot more about like his thoughts and his experiences and his processing of them. So it's like the opposite, the flip side to like book 3, which is wild, and like there's the dragons and there's an underground institute and all these doctors and like lines out the door waiting for their welfare checks and buses in nowhere and no sun and like all the things that are descriptive of that sort of external world, versus this one where that's being built inside of him. And maybe that's where I like these are kind of got to match up in some way. It's like his interior and exterior parts being represented differently.
Right. And this is definitely the realism. Like when he climbs the hill and he's like, oh, that pillar must be some, forlorn maiden waving me down. And he gets up to the top and the priest is just like, hi, the stairs are in the back. That's a pillar for map makers. Like it's like real life is kind of boring. And even the explosion down in the valley, he's like, oh, they're testing munitions. It's like normal. It's just so boring.
There was one other funny part that I'm not finding here now, that where they talk about, here it is. So I think this is important too. So when he's talking to the minister and he's talking about his like lecture, personal view of history, blah, 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 blah. They're talking about the Big Bang. And he's like, people say it all came from an atom, one gigantic atom, and exploded and went out. And the minister's like, yeah, I've heard rumors to that effect. And Thaw is like, it's more than rumor, Dr. McFerrin. It's proof fact. Well, Professor Hoyle thinks all the material of the universe is made out of hydrogen because the hydrogen atom is the simplest form of atom. And he thinks hydrogen atoms are continually coming into existence and increasing spaces between the stars and forming new stars and galaxies and things. Dear me, is that not miraculous? And you believe it? Well, it isn't definitely proved yet, but I like it better than the other theory. It's more optimistic. Why? Well, if the first theory is true, then one day the stars will burn out and the universe will be nothing but empty space and cold black lumps of rock. But if Professor Hoyle is right, there will always be new stars to replace the dead ones, which was a real debate for a time of like the expansion of the universe versus the solid state theory, but also is like representative of, is this entropic or is this like renewable? which is also like a very common like motif or theme in like postmodern books of this sort of Pynchonian era. Like all the Pynchon books are entropy versus like, is there a way to reverse entropy?
Let there be light. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is kind of that is referencing right back to that. Like, is his world, is Duncan Thaw's world as like a kid in this going to fall apart necessarily, or is there a way to like keep going and add in new things and add in new things?
I can't stay much longer, but I wanted to reference 183 before I have to. I don't want to say get off after we've talked so much about 10 minutes later. Before I
I'll be back in 10 minutes, guys.
Before I have to exit, I have a wee bit of asthma coming on here. But he's asking like, why are there beasts that can only kill? Like, why do we have appetites to hurt each other? Why are there baby kook? Like, where's the love in that? And of course, the guy's like, dear me, you're a smart kid asking really smart questions. The world was made by God and made beautiful. God gave it to man to look after and keep beautiful, and man gave it to the devil. Since then, the world has been the devil's province and an annex of hell. So I think it fits in wonderfully with this idea of like descent into hell, the purgatory, like life is hell. Like I thought it was really a very arresting passage with his conversations with this priest.
Yes. And then back to like, I mean, you keep getting all these references to hell over and over and over again as like this divine comedy Dante sort of vibe too. So it's, I really like that too.
But I like the way that linked with the idea of like rape.
Yeah.
Here's something beautiful, and you're taking it and making it something evil and awful. And so here's this paradise on earth, and we've created a hell out of it. I thought it paralleled really well with those disturbing sections that you read.
Yeah. So yeah, I think like that's probably. Is there anything else that you wanted to add, Kai, or do you want to wrap up with your lines of the week?
I'm happy to do line of the week. I mean, I thought this was it was pretty straightforward, and I like the things that we can pull from it. It's
there. I've written next.
Math. Also, I agree with the fuck math on page 168. Where the textbook. It's like a man and his wife clean their teeth from the same cylindrical tube of toothpaste, and like that's how every math question sounded to me in high school. I was like, just fuck off! Like, who cares? Who cares?
I started trying to figure out if that's even a solvable math question. It definitely is, but like, it's so funny.
Infuriating.
Like, you could solve this. This isn't that hard.
But why would you? You could, but why would you?
I don't know, because it's fun. Solving things is fun.
Beth has 2 Ethereum, and
that's 2 Ethereum.
Kate has 0.1 Dogecoin. If they both text Elon Musk and he gives them,
oh my God,
the future of math is going to be those. Can we just go back to Tom, Dick, and Harry, please? Oh man.
Not to bang away at the masturbation stuff, but 159 when he first comes is one of the most like true to life and interesting kind of 2 paragraphs that I've read in a long time, where he's just like rubbing himself, and then suddenly he's like a gray slug shape.
Oh God, thanks a lot, Chad.
Stomach, and I was like, and he's like, I don't know what's happening. I just wrote fuck yes in the margins. My line of the week is from 173, and it's when Coulter is like, he's like talking about his crushes, right? And his crush on Kate, and Coulter's like, oh, she's like, with all these different people, like, you don't really stand a chance. And he's like, I'm sorry I told you about that. And I was like, I want to know every obstacle there is. There's obstacles of not being attractive, not having money to take her out, not knowing how to talk to her, and now it seems she's a flirt. If I ever reach her, she'll shift somewhere else and keep shifting. I love that part. It's like a little bit misogynistic, but I also think it's super funny. Where it's like, I'm not attractive, I'm poor, I don't know how to speak to her, and then even if I do, be all over the place. What am I going to do?
How do we level this playing field?
I'm gonna write a story about
She's got-
synesthesia. She'll notice me.
She's got a back like an all-in wrestler. I don't know what that is, but
I don't either. But
when you cuddle with her, it's like falling into a sofa. Practice on my girl.
My girl will let you kiss her. Ask her to the dance.
There's
Big
a big line for Big Jane.
I like when he keeps saying Big Jane, and then the next time that Thaw sees her, he's like, she wasn't as big as he said she was.
No, it's to differentiate her from the undeveloped Junes.
Yes. She stayed back 1 year, so she's got boobies. I assume that's what it's for. Line of the week, anyone else, Kaya?
Yeah, I've at the top of 140 where he and Coulter are trying to build their fort, and then it falls apart. And then Coulter turns around and says, "You bugger, you damned bugger, you bloody damned bugger," shouted Thaw. "You fucking bloody damned bugger," yelled Coulter, and disappeared from sight among the trees. The escalation, the adolescent escalation.
I thought that was great too, because like that is like kind of how boys interact. Is like, at least when I was growing up, like you'd get in a fight and like, scream whatever and punch each other, or throw rocks, and then like 2 hours later, like, "Hey buddy, you want to go hang out and get some ice cream? Let's go talk about girls behind the shed." Like there's like this instant like release and then forgiveness. It's very, very childlike. Do you have anything else that you want to add, Brian?
I do not. I have to take a phone call right now, though. So
okay, we'll wrap up. I'll see you next. Well, not next week. Next week is July 4th. We will not have an episode next week, but we will the week after on July 11th, which will go through page 267, which is chapter 23. So we'll get out of book 1 and into book 2, which should be also interesting to see like what this transition is before we head into that final stretch. As always, like us, review us, share the podcast. Like us, love us. use our asthma cures at your own expense.
Pay attention to me.
Pay attention to us. Tell your friends. Leave a review. So on and so forth. We'll be back in 2 weeks with the next section of Lanark.
Bang, bang.